Hey everyone, my name is Peyton, and in this tutorial I would like to go over how to set up a Nanite landscape blend material with displacement. This is going to be kind of specific to 5.5 and going forward with a lot of the Unreal Engine updates and so. But I really wanted to show, kind of with my last video, I did some Nanite displacement just using the height map information, showing off how it's just like default in Unreal Engine now. But I wanted to go into how you could actually set that up with the blend. And I think one of the best cases for that is, of course, as you see here, using it for something like a landscape. So we're going to be building out a landscape material that has both the Nanite kind of displacement as well as it being a blend, which is really cool. So yeah, what I want to do first is actually start off with just a blank slate. So jumping over here, you can see that, yeah, as you see, this is kind of the previous just simple variant of it. But if I want to have the same displacement, have also some blends, I think this is a better way to go about it. So what we're going to do first is, of course, actually make a landscape to place it on. So what I want to do is go up here to our selection mode and switch it over to landscape, of course. And so now we have the option to make a landscape. I'm not going to get fancy with it. So all I really want to do, I'm not going to fill a world. I'm just going to hit create. So that way we have a landscape in our scene. So it's going to take a second or two. Now you can see that we have a landscape. I can paint on it if I wanted to or so. But this is just a great starting point for what we're wanting to create. So what we're going to do now is, before anything else, I want to actually build out the material. Eventually we're going to come back over here to the paint feature inside of the landscape, and that's where we will be diving into actually using some of the blends. But gonna go down here, of course, and actually right click, make a material. And I'm gonna name this just, let's say, landscape or something like that. Displacement, cool. So this is gonna be our landscape material itself. I'm gonna open that up, and what I wanna do is just build it out real quick with the different textures that I'm gonna be using. So starting off, of course, we're gonna be using the actual landscape layer blends. So landscape layer blend, just right clicking and finding that. Then what we want to do is actually expose a couple of these ray elements for the layer blend. So this will be the different layers, of course, that we are actually painting between. So going to press that twice just because I'm doing two different materials. And then under the index is where I'm going to be naming it. So let's say the top one, let's name that one dirt. And then the bottom one, let's name that one brick. Because as you saw, I'll be using a dirt and brick. The dirt's from like my recent kind of ground material pack or so, and then a brick's an older one that I've had for a while that I sometimes use. But yeah, basically wanted to name those two. So now we see dirt, brick, and then over here in the blend type, gonna switch it from weight to height. So I'm going to do it for both of them, and now you can see that I have a option for a height map as well. So we're going to be utilizing that to get some of the height map variation a bit more out of it. So there we go. That should be good to go. I'm just going to Control C, Control V a couple of times, and we're going to do a base color. We're going to do a roughness. Let's do the normal. Do an ambient occlusion, and then the last one, so might as well put them all in. I'm going also to do the displacement. So this is going to be the actual like tessellation or displacement of the mesh itself, what it's going to be using for the height information. So that one's yeah, important. Of course, you see that it's grayed out, and the reason why is because we actually need to go over, click here, and just make sure that we have tessellation turned on. So I'm going to go over here, type in tessellation or so, and then enable tessellation. So yeah, tessellation, displacement. Displacement's like basically, yeah, as the word says, is displacing it, of course. So don't want you to get too confused with all the wordage, but tessellation displacement for this scenario is the exact same. So yeah, but turn that on, enabled it. We're gonna click out of there. And so now we can actually just connect up my different textures real quick. So going to go ahead and go down here. And so, yeah, as I said, I'm going to be using the, I believe those 5 for the dirt. And then I have, let's say the brick down here. I want to use this one instead, just because it's a little bit cleaner, I would say. Let's see. Makes more sense, I guess, for the dirt as well. But yeah, so I'm going to start just by plugging in, of course, the dirt map there. Gonna grab this guy, plug it in for the brick, and then while I finish up this process of plugging in my different maps, I do also want to mention how important it is to keep safe and up to date with online risks and your personal security. For me, I feel like it is every week where I hear from a friend or relative that has been impacted by their personal information being stolen. Data brokers sell that information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, relatives, it's all out there on the internet, and that's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. When someone does get impacted by their information being stolen, it's recommended to use strong passwords, monitor account activity, and consider credit freezes or fraud alerts from credit bureaus. Well, thankfully Aura does all of this for me, and best of all, I don't have to download several different apps to manage all of these different aspects. It only takes one. If my info is compromised at any point, I wouldn't worry because Aura is always on, always doing the hard work of keeping me safe. I value my privacy, and I also value yours. You can go to aura.com/Peyton Varney, which is also linked below in the description, to start your 2-week free trial and see how Aura could start saving you today. Now we're at the point, of course, I have everything set up here, but except for my height maps. And so yeah, as you see here, my ambient occlusions for each of them are plugged in, my normal, my roughness, and then my diffuse or base color here. And then we're going to just plug in the heights down here as well. So the brick one goes into here, and then the dirt one's going to go into the layered dirt, of course. But I'm actually also going to reuse these and plug them into the other locations here, because they're going to be the ones also being used for the brick height information for each of these. So it'll just kind of get, a double reuse out of these real quick. So of course, like I'm sure most of you might use like pack textures and stuff, just because it gets it a little bit less like texture calls. We're able to just be read in, but I have it separated out, especially for videos, just because it's a little bit easier to see, and I feel like slightly less confusing when they're all individual. And yeah, so of course you could like stream this down to many less textures, because this is a lot for just, one simple blend. But yeah, I think it shows it a little bit better, at least visually. So there we go, we have that. I do need the height dirt in, so make sure that the height dirt wasn't missed anywhere else either, and should be, sometimes I just do something like this to make sure, the connection points. But yeah, should be good to go now. So I think now that we have tessellation enabled over there, we have all of our stuff plugged in. One thing I am going to also potentially do is we're going to be using this for, let's see, landscape layer blend. Yeah, and so one thing I might also do real quick is these are the different heights that we're using at the moment. what I'm gonna do is just multiply these by a value. Reason being is because this can be my way of basically kind of controlling the intensity. So I'm gonna plug this in to here real quick, and then I'm just gonna convert this to a parameter, and let's say kind of the contrast, I guess, of the blend itself, like contrast intensity, and we'll plug it in there. And I'm just making sure that, yeah, they're both the same. So I'm gonna use control left click to drag all of those over. Makes it a little bit easier for movement. Now that we have those connected and everything, we can now just basically exit out of the landscape material at the moment and go over here to our actual landscape. So what I can do now is actually scroll over here. Make sure not just in the streaming proxy, but I want to go to the landscape itself up here in the outliner. And I'm going to go over to my content, find my material, and just scroll down real quick. And then I'm going to drag my material over and then just apply it to the landscape. So at first you're going to see that, it's like almost like a mirror showing up weirdly and all. And that's just because we don't have material info for those like layers at the moment, but yeah, no problem there. Just gonna save it, and then what we want to do with this now is actually switch over with our selection mode. So I'm gonna go over to the landscape mode to do the next process. While we're in the landscape mode, there's different sections. I do want to be under paint, of course, like we were previously. And now I want to add those layers to our material. So you can add them individually, but this button right here will do a create layers from assigned materials. So that should be good to go if I click that to grab the dirt and the brick, which is, good to see. And then just looking over here, that's good to see. And so we have our brick and our dirt right here. And so what we need to do now, because it's not showing up, of course, is there's no material layer info. So we need to go right here and do a create layer info. So I'm going to create one for this, and then I'm just going to save it in the content browser. So it's going to come down here to this location as well. And then I'll also make one for the brick. So going to do that, also save it to the content. And now you'll see both of those, which is just the layer info for the landscape itself. So I'm gonna save it again, but now you can see that if I zoom in, this is my dirt layer, which is cool to see. One thing you might notice is that we don't actually have the displacement happening at the moment, because that is one thing we forgot to turn on with the landscape. And so I'm gonna go over here real quick, click on the landscape, and then I want to actually scroll down in the details panel and enable Nanite. So I'm gonna click this checkbox, and then I also need to build the data for the landscape as well. So just going to hit build, and now you'll see that it's popping up pretty drastically. So of course, one thing with that is we don't want it to be this intense and strong. So I'm going to go back over to my material here. So there we go, and open this up. And where we can actually adjust the intensity of that is going to be in the panels, or in the panel for the details here. And we're gonna scroll down while having the material selected, and you'll find under Nanite as well, there's a displacement and there's a magnitude in the center. So I'm gonna adjust this one down pretty drastically. We're at a 4 right now, so I would say anything probably under a 1 would easily work. So I'm gonna do a 0.5 at first, and maybe hit apply, see how that works. Still pretty intense. Maybe I'll do a 0.1 and see how that works. So yeah, not too bad there. It's looking pretty good. So now we're having displacement, of course, using our height map and all. And right now, only just the dirt showing up, and that's just because we haven't painted on it. One other thing that I want to probably do is I'm gonna just add a texture coordinate. So add a texture coordinate here, and this is gonna be for the tiling amount, generally I do multiply these by a value. That way I can basically turn this into a parameter. So I'm going to name this, let's say, the brick tiling, because I think overall the dirt tiling is all right for like the scale related to a person, but I think the brick one I might need to adjust a bit. So yeah, just going to plug this in just to the brick UVs. Put this up here real quick, and then one more should be up there. So cool. And then yeah, I think right now let's set this to a default of 1. Make sure that one's set to 1. And I might just because I think based off of how the brick material is overall, the main thing is that, yeah, they're just too small, and so I need to make them a little bit larger. So I probably need to go to a value less than 1. Of course, yeah, sometimes, especially since we have Nanite enabled now, some of the changes you might do inside of the material might take a little bit more time to actually apply them, just because it's having to recompute the entire shader, even though that the like brick isn't necessarily applied in the scene. But once you have these things set up, it'll go a little bit faster with that. And then one other thing that I wanted to do is, right now I have like 2 of these, or 1 of these. I want to make 2 of them. I'm gonna actually make them separate. So this will be the contrast for the dirt, but I want to do a contrast. Maybe I'll just name this one contrast 2. There we go. So now, yeah, it is all good to go. I can close out of that, and we're back over here. One thing that I might need to do again, sometimes just based off of like the shader changes, you might have to rebuild the data on the actual landscape as well, if you've done any drastic like shader adjustments or so. So let that happen. As you can see down here, it's preparing the shaders. But what we can do now is actually jump over and start to get to the painting process. So think beyond that, we did everything over here. Cool. And so I'm gonna jump over to the landscape tool, like I was mentioning, and start to actually paint in some of the brick information. So right now, need to make sure I'm on paint. There's a variety of different like paint tools, brushes, etc. But I really want to just start with a simple small brush, and then you need to make sure down here in the layers that we have the item that you want to paint on. So I have the brick, and as you see here, we did get our update where we now have the displacement happening. So what I can do is start to paint with my brick, and sometimes the actual squares might take a second to load in. And now, as you see, we actually have the brick showing up as well, so we can paint this out and then start to get into some more refinement after we have it kind of in the scene. Sometimes you'll see the shadow information that'll adjust as well. It's based off of also just because we're in the landscape brush and all, but if we go back and kind of switch over to selection, it'll fix it. But I'll just paint out a space for a second here that we can kind of use as a testing ground for our blends and everything. So I'm gonna do this. And yeah, as you see right now, super soft fade off on the sides. But we have displacement both with the dirt as well as with the bricks here, which is cool to see. So yeah. Let's say that this works for the time being. We can jump back over, like I was mentioning, to selection, and also, I can right click and play from here, run around with my character and all on the pieces, start to see like how the scale looks and all with that as well. So cool to sort of try out with that. But what we want to do now is I'm going to actually go into the material and want to basically adjust some of the edge or so. One other thing that might play a factor into this is our sunlight. So I can adjust this and see how its results are working, especially with the shadows. Those are pretty intense. So you could have a flatter sun, but I do like where I kind of had it. That way you're able to see just the height differences and be able to control some of that. So yeah, let's say that this is good. Cool. And then what we can do now is play around with, let's see. Yeah, play around with the actual blend itself. So I'm going to go into the landscape material that we made. And since those things that we set up earlier are all parameters, we shouldn't have to wait for any information now. So just going to kind of bring it over to the side here. And you can see that with this should be the tiling amount for the brick. So we can actually like scale it up if we wanted to. Let's say 0.75. And like I said, sometimes the shadows get a little funky with just how, it's computing, but you can easily fix it in a second. But yeah, let's say that, okay, that's not too bad. It's a nice size in comparison to each other, like the dirt and the brick. Can go down here, and with these two contrasts that I have, I could also, I guess, set this up differently, but the contrast, I could start to play with some of the actual blend itself and get so this is gonna make it sharper if I bring this together. Yeah, sometimes those shadows mess with it a little bit, but I could bring these two in. So you can see there that pulls that back, and then if I pushed this inwards, you're gonna get a pretty strong line between the two, like that. And yeah, probably is a little bit too drastic. I would say we don't want anything that intense. I do kind of like how it uses the fade off if we use it in a softer sense, I guess. So I'm gonna just bring this back, and then I'll probably just, it really comes down, it depends on the material and all. And I guess also I could do something like unlit to get better results for now until we get the shadows working how I want them to. But yeah, I think this gives a better feeling, at least, of like what's happening. You can see the intensity, contrast, and all is really being pushed sharply with that. But moral of the story is that, yeah, you can just set up some contrasts, kind of multiplying with your height maps here to where you can control that blend state and adjust it for whatever works best for your material. So I'm probably going to go back to something a little bit in between, so not super sharp but not super soft either, just for how dirt might fall onto this. And then probably jump back over to, gonna hit apply. Cool. And then I can jump back over to the lit mode. So now we have a nice bit of dirt kind of blending in with our bricks here, and I think it's yielding some pretty solid results. So with that, we have actually walked through the process of setting up a landscape material that uses both Nanite as well as displacement, and also allows you to actually blend between multiple materials, which is pretty awesome. So as you can see here, there's a lot of opportunities with this. And of course, if you have any questions or so, feel free to drop them down below in the comments. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.